Hi, everyone, and welcome to another series of Foundry virtual events. My name is Joyce, Film Marketing Manager here at Foundry, and your host for today. In today's webinar, we have Henry Bull, Head of Recruitment at Framestore, who was also leading the Launchpad program. And we also have our stars of today's webinar, our talented students and artists from University of Hertfordshire. So I'd like to start with Daniel, who focuses on lighting and compositing. Patrick, who focuses on texturing, look development, environment. Elliot, who focuses on character, creature, and facial modeling. And Emily, who does CFX, ridging, was also the team leader for this project. And then we've got Emily, who focuses on character and creature animation. So before we dive into the session, I just wanted to share a couple of updates. So we have over 36 webinars on demand available on Livestorm. For more information, you can go onto our foundry.com/events page. For any questions, any concerns, or any feedback you wanted to share with us, you can send us an email on virtual.events@foundry.com. We've got on our upcoming schedule, Bring Your Own Comp next week, which is a partnership with London ACM SIGGRAPH. And we also have Art of Texturing panel on October 20th as well. So for more information on those webinars and how to register, you can go into our foundry.com/events page. We have some great learning materials such as documentation, release notes, training docs, and etc. You can find all of these on our Learning Hub on learn.foundry.com. Also, stay up to date with us by following us on social media. We all have an insights page as well, where we have plenty of case studies and articles as well. So make sure you check out our Insights Hub as well. Lastly, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of our studios and all the studios who participated in virtual events throughout this whole year, and also the individual freelancers as well. Thank you for sharing your stories and experiences with us, and we're really looking forward to broadening the horizon and doing more collaborations with you guys. So thank you again for joining us and sharing your stories. Well, that's it for me. Thank you again for joining. I'm going to hand over to Henry, who's going to be talking a little bit more about the Framestore Launchpad program. Thank you. Over to you, Henry.
Hey guys, hope everybody's well. So my name's Henry. I am the head of recruitment at Framestore Film. And this year, obviously a very different year for everybody. But for 15 years now at Framestore, we've been running the highly successful Launchpad internship, where we usually welcome about 15 different interns into our studio to work across our TV, commercials, pipeline team, R&D team, film team, to gain that first step into the industry and get a chance to get their hands dirty on some of the great films we work on at Framestore. But obviously with this very different year, it means that we weren't even in the studio, let alone introducing any interns into our studio. So us and our global team had to think about how we can still run our fantastic Launchpad, but virtually, because that's the world we live in now. So we put our heads together, and instead of trying to run the traditional structure, which just wouldn't have worked, sadly, we thought about adopting a kind of competition. So what we did is that we opened up applications to teams of maybe 5 or 6 from around the world to get involved and help to create a 30-second short film over an 8-week period. During that 8-week period, we offered them support through mentors from Framestore, and also gave them some behind-the-scenes look at how we create the films at Framestore. Over that time, it was amazing, the films that all the students produced and the hard work that they went into. It was a learning curve for us as well. We had to really get a lot of new technology into place to get it done. But in the end, as you'll see through the film that Herts are about to present, that they were able to produce, not just them, but the other 7 teams were able to produce some amazing films. We hope next year to be able to welcome the interns back into the studio at Framestore, but if that doesn't happen, we'll still run this very successful virtual internship again. If anybody has any interest in taking part in next year's internship, keep an eye on our website, the careers page there, but also we have some opportunities globally within that as well. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to the Herts team now, who have produced this fantastic film, to give you an idea of what they went through, the trials and tribulations they went through to produce such a film. Thanks.
Hey everyone, we're Team Herts. Hopefully we've just been introduced, and this is behind the scenes, our 30-second long short film that we have just finished for the Framestore Launchpad competition. My name's Amy and I was responsible for animation. We have Elliot on character and facial modelling, Emily on rigging and CFX, Dan on light, comp and layout, and finally Patrick on texture, look dev and environment. Thank you to Henry and Joyce for arranging this, and a huge thank you to our mentors at Framestore, Toya and Olivia, for helping guide us through the Launchpad competition, and of course getting us in contact with all the other fantastic artists who gave us wonderful feedback throughout this project. I will say, just as a disclaimer, we're not experts, and there is no one way to make a film, of course. There's a lot of different films, and you know, we don't have decades of experience on us. We're just kind of graduates, but we're going to share our experience with you, and hopefully you find something of some use. So let's get started.
Scene 4, take 22, and action.
Whoa, cut. Can we turn on the lights, please?
He just needs to look cooler.
Okay, I've got an idea. Perfect.
Yeah, much better, from the top.
Absolutely fabulous.
You know, we could bring the bear back.
We started with the brief, what would the future of VFX look like? The good thing about having such a specific brief meant we didn't get overwhelmed by choice and spent ages thinking of all the possibilities, which can definitely happen when you go about making a short film. Pretty quickly, we decided we wanted to do something that would take the viewer behind the scenes. We were inspired by the behind the scenes footage of stop motion films and thought, what if we could combine the physical aspect with all changes being instantaneous? So our idea for the future of VFX started with that. A virtual CG set where all changes could be made instantaneously and you could actually interact with the characters and the environment.
Absolutely fabulous.
You know, we could bring the bear back.
This was one of our first bits of official concept art. We didn't waste time making anything beautiful or detailed, we just wanted to try and tell a story as soon as possible. Once we'd kind of locked in the first story draft, we started visualizing the character more. At first he was a superhero and then he kind of turned into this barbarian character instead. We went through a lot of iterations of body type and whether he was more Viking or Anglo-Saxon, etc. Framestore got us in touch with Nicola, who is one of their concept artists, and he gave us a lot of in-depth advice on character silhouette and keeping a consistent design language. So after a couple of weeks we had our mid-review, where we presented our edit that we were pretty proud of. We had a lot of jokes in there where he would change gender and the environment would change to a fairy kingdom and his weapon would change, etc, etc. And like many first drafts, it got rightfully roasted. The Framestore mentors really wanted us to do our best and were really honest, which we were and still are incredibly grateful for. I think one of the most important lessons we took away was, your ideas are not your children, it's okay to throw them in the bin. So we came back to this guy. We each wrote scripts, threw ideas at the wall, and saw what stuck. We had a character and environment, we just need to make him work. We realised that for a short film, trying to cram more than one idea or one joke just wasn't working. So we kept at it until we come up with something we thought worked better. Had a few more meetings with various Framestore people for help and feedback, and ended up with the final product. The Framestore mentors were really great. They understood that we had time limits and that they just really wanted to help us make the best thing that we could.
We started off by gathering a lot of reference. We really liked the style of various stop-motion characters, how they were handmade and very expressive. We also knew we wanted our character to be physically strong and have a brutish personality, fitting for a barbarian. I decided to do some early concepting in ZBrush, exploring stylized forms and establishing personality for our character. You can see here how everything is feeling quite incohesive. My experience was predominantly in realistic characters/creatures, so stylized work felt quite alien to me. After struggling for some direction, Framestore put us in touch with one of their modelers, Dan, who recommended that I approach the character with realistic human anatomy, then stylizing proportions from there. Following Dan's advice, I focused on establishing realistic anatomy for our character. From there I began to bulk his upper torso and stylize his facial features, giving this final result. In Maya, I utilized the quad draw tool to create a production-ready topology. I focused a lot around the eyes and mouth, making sure there's enough density for creating expressive blend shapes. I created the clothes predominantly in ZBrush. I purposely wanted to give the clothes a handmade stop-motion feel, like that of a miniature. It was important from a design aspect that his silhouette was easily readable from a distance. We also experimented with the idea of a beard, however we discarded the idea believing it would make his facial expressions hard to read from a distance. We stumbled across some various people wearing animal pelts. We decided this could add to his personality in a somewhat comical way, and later it became a plot point in our story. Here you can see how the bear pelt really added to his silhouette, while also characterizing his look further. Moving on to blend shapes, I used a mixture of ZBrush and Maya, initially sculpting the expressions on a layer in ZBrush, then importing and testing them in Maya. A benefit of this pipeline is that ZBrush's 2.5D shading, pixels, means that what I'm seeing in software isn't true 3D, so by utilizing ZBrush's sculpting tools, then importing them into Maya, I can light and check the forms in a true 3D space. Alongside modelling the character, I also modelled his weapon. You can see some of our references here, with Nordic axes being a main inspiration. The final axe model was designed to be easily readable from a distance. I wanted the axe to appear somewhat fantasy in its design, while still incorporating a lot of historical accuracies, with details such as the little leaf sprouting out of the branch handle, the wolf head carving at the base, and the insignia on the blade.
After unlocking our story with the first draft, we tried to visualize our character further. We went through a lot of iterations on whether he is going to be a superhero, a barbarian, Viking, and so on. During the modeling stage, we tried to give our character a background story, to give it a sense of validity. Questions like who is he and where is he from? What kind of environment is he living in? What does he do? Questions like this will help us shape and give emphasis on our character's behavior and personality. By constantly communicating with Elliot, who is our modeler, we can fully grasp the personality we have given this character that forms the foundation of our texturing ideas. During our final review, our mentors gave us detailed feedback in regards to texturing. That's enough about the idea behind our character and story. Now I'm going to talk about the technical aspects and methodologies that we used during our texturing stage using Mari as our main software. Our workflow are split into 4 different main stages. A preparation stage, this tackles gathering references, checking our assets UVs, and preparing our images and material textures that we will then use in Mari. Baking utility maps, this covers what utility maps to use to drive our textures and breakups. Mari prep, at this stage, I'm going to demo how I prepare my asset in Mari before starting texturing, as well as building our material using a non-destructive workflow. Lastly, look development, this covers setting up shaders and materials, as well as using ISO masks to look dev our asset. However, for this video, I will only cover the first 3 stages of our pipeline. During preparation stage, it is very crucial to have your references ready. I always try to collect real-world references as well as its concepts and inspirations. For me, it is always best to have real-world references, as this will help you observe how materials behave and react in light, while the concept and inspirations can drive your artistry. To ensure everything flows smoothly, it is best to check the assets UVs to prevent any distortions or errors while baking our utility maps later on. By checking and laying out our UVs correctly and neatly, we can easily identify parts of our assets during the texturing stage and speed up our process. Lastly, I'd like to prepare my texture images that I'm going to use in Mari. So I split my textures into 3 different sets: masks, tilables, and overlays. The tilables are the materials I'm going to use, metal, rubber, wood, etc. Overlays are for breaking up the textures, and masks for art directing. Before going into texturing, I have to bake essential utility or auxiliary maps to drive my texture breakups. These maps are going to assist during our texturing and shading process. These maps mask certain areas that we can use to build up any damages such as edge wear, dirt, scratches, and so on. We chose Mari as our main texturing software because it just gives us the right balance between using techniques and methodologies, as well as giving us artistic freedom. It is also easy to work with the node graph workflow to build up the foundation of textures by structuring it procedurally first, and then switching to artistic mode by hand painting any details or bespoke details that we want. With a non-destructive setup and mask-driven workflow, we can easily do any changes in anticipation for any feedback that is expected in a production environment. During the first stage, I have to create all masks for all my materials, and from then will be used as well for creating our ISO or RGB masks. I am also using a plugin for Mari called Extension Pack, which provides a lot of extra useful nodes when texturing. The most useful nodes that I use is the extension pack or the radio node and transmitter, which sends data or any nodes across one point in the graph and to hide the connection lines between nodes in order to have a cleaner graph with less intersecting lines. With its other functionalities, such as the node hotbox, I can create nodes that I often use when texturing, which helps to speed up my workflow better. When building up texture, I always build it up by 3 layers. Base material, which is just the basic texture of the material, and then breakups, any damage or edge wear buildup, and lastly, art direct. This is where you add any hand-painted textures for texture variation and telling a story with your asset.
As our project got a ton of story feedback at around the midway point, 4 weeks in or so, we almost completely went back to the drawing board with our script, pushing out more and more iterations until we found something that, we thought worked once again. Unfortunately, this meant that the animation had to pretty much start over as well, meaning I only had a couple of weeks after locking in the script to finalise all the animation in the film, while being very conscious of the fact that it needs just enough time to go through cloth sim and CFX and shot sculpt afterwards before being sent to render. My actual workflow for animation is maybe a little unusual in that I work almost entirely using splined keyframes from the very beginning. I used to be told and taught so much that it was incredibly important to hit your so-called golden storytelling poses early on, but I find that I work much more efficiently if I don't bother too much about dynamic poses. The way I see it is that when your team's constantly discussing and brainstorming ideas regarding how the character's going to act, it's probably going to be a waste of time noodling around with the smaller details to try and push your poses early on. I found that just getting ideas and keyframes out to the team as quickly as possible meant I could then mess around with my arcs and my silhouettes and all the little details afterwards when the idea as a whole finally stuck. We also ended up using gags that would save us animation time and allow us to reuse keyframes, such as when he gets reversed out of the frame and remains off screen for about 4 seconds, during which we don't need the character in order to make the joke land. In terms of our character's on-screen personality, as you saw, a lot of this was explored in our concept and modelling stages while we were developing the character. We decided that because he has no dialogue, being able to show some sort of disdain towards the narrators off screen would help just to build his character a little bit and essentially give the audience something to keep looking at while the narrators are too busy being indecisive. Obviously, he's an actor, so he does what he's asked to do very well, but in the downtime while the narrators are speaking, we see more of that tired, little bit sarcastic side to him.
Yeah, much better, from the top.
Being the only animator for the project can be pretty stressful, but I found it kind of had its upsides for a short project as well. As with the rest of the team, we all essentially specialised in our own part of the pipeline, with no 2 people doing the same job, basically. The key benefit to this approach is that we could each develop our own little mini pipelines without being concerned about other artists doing the same job as you. With more artists, you might need to establish a more serious pipeline and character guide to keep everyone creating the same style of work, which can eat up very important production time on a short project. Structuring our team such that everyone had their own specialised area of production instead of a team of 5 generalists, for example, allowed each member to focus on those areas by themselves, avoiding the technical or communication issues caused by having multiple artists doing the same jobs. With this method, we found that we ended up being much more efficient and had way fewer problems to solve by the end of it.
We were starting with 2D concepts to get an idea of composition back when we were going to have the entire short in stormy weather. So it was like considering just a few different kind of moods, kind of compositions in Photoshop. So here are some early renders playing around with lighting and composition and the background. Really just like starting in 3D and going in there and moving things around, just blocks and some early cliffs Patrick sculpted. To save us a little more time and to do quicker iterations, we opted for a 2.5D approach for the background of the environment. So we split the scene kind of. The foreground we were planning to do fully rendered in Arnold, and the background we were planning to do fully matte painted, which using 3D as a base, but then painting on top of it in Photoshop and projecting it in Nuke and so on to get the parallax and some movement in the background and such. So here's some different iterations for that background layer, which I did. And finally, the sky and the atmospherics were a big part of my work. The first challenge was the clouds. We wanted to be able to art direct the composition of the sky and be able to even stylize it to an extent. So to be able to just dynamically change the sky was very important, which is the reason why we didn't want to choose stock footage or anything like that, because that would just kind of lock us to whatever that image is, and it would be not stylized at all. So we wanted to be able to animate an image dynamically for full control. I think a good tip for any smaller group-driven project is student projects. It's a good idea to use the time in the beginning for R&D to create tools that can be used at the end of the pipeline when it gets to crunch, especially for people like me who work at the end of the pipeline of comp and lighting. So while the pipeline is starting, you just help out where you can, and most importantly, get the pipeline down for you. So when your work ramps up, you can execute what is planned. You have the tools and workflows ready to tackle the problems as they arise. Just get yourself prepared for eventualities, and they will come, which I will get to later. So continuing, early on I worked on a little script that allowed me to do the sky. So I was thinking, okay, a sky is a big part of what we're trying to do here. So early on I worked on creating a little script that allowed me to paint flow maps to control the movement of the stormy clouds in the background. It looped the motion, so it meant that I could implement it easily to varying lengths of shots, saving me time later on. It's basically an eye distort with a few expressions linked to rotor paint and some dissolves and stuff like that. So you could control with a node, you could control speed and frames before it starts to repeat and how long it takes to transition and so on. That combined with a projection on an animated card that I gave some displacement itself created some pretty good results. Not perfect, but good enough for what we needed. So add some lightning in with a Kia and some rotor shapes, and you got yourself a little background storm, which was pretty cool. I was also responsible for the DMP, so here's a quick little breakdown. Made the different layers in Photoshop, then assembled everything in Nuke. This workflow kind of enabled me to control the composition and the movement of the individual cloud parts in comp. Combine that DMP with some rain using a Nuke particles, the cloud flow tool I mentioned earlier, and a little lightning, you get this, which is the first version of our background DMP. Using Nuke's 3D viewport, I was able to see where the geometry of the render was to accurately place the sky and the rain according to camera and scene, which was really important to make it feel real, especially with the camera moving and so on. As modeling continued and animation and rigging started ramping up, we did some more iterations of the composition here. A quick comparison between the raw render before and after going through comp. We were using light groups extensively to shape our lighting in comp without re-rendering. If you're doing that approach, use multiply operations only for the lights to keep it physically accurate. You can even propagate your changes back into Arnold if you want to. You just have to copy your RGB values of your multiply from Nuke and multiply them with the gain of your light in Arnold, and you get the same intensity and color in render if you want to do that. Remember when I said being prepared for eventualities is a good idea? Well, it turned out that we were quite behind on schedule with not much time left, and I realized that environment texturing might be a close call, and we wanted to focus efforts on the hero character with texturing to make that one look the best possible. So luckily I was prepared. The concept I had was projecting the textures for the environment in comp. So using an albedo diffuse pass, I could separate the albedo colors and lighting information for most of the assets. So by dividing your beauty with the albedo diffuse and then changing things about the albedo diffuse and then multiplying them back together, you can basically change the textures underneath the lighting, which is what I did. Obviously, you need to project those. So I projected those onto the position path, so it worked with camera movement and so on. Yeah, this technique has obviously some drawbacks and some advantages, which I'm gonna talk about now. So the drawbacks are it doesn't look as real as proper lookdev assets, since you can only play with specular and diffuse. Roughness or SSS can't really be done using this technique in comp. Second thing is it only works on static objects, since it's using the position path to project the textures. You could use the UV path, but we didn't really have time and it wasn't really necessary in our situation. Also, a big drawback is artifacts by occlusion and parallax need to be addressed. Cryptomat is very useful there to just help you keep those in check. And obviously the motion blur needs to be considered and reintroduced manually. So motion vectors and like having the camera and utility passes can be super useful here to generate that. And there's some big advantages for us, which is why we did it. First of all, it saved us a lot of time. And it kept us art directing when the time for re-renders were like long over. The textures can be changed without re-rendering, which is like the big one. One can paint the entire environment, painting out different assets and making every asset individual. You can just like paint basically like a painting. You can just paint underneath the lighting and make everything look pretty. So you get this hand-painted feel, which is similar to how assets and scenes in stop motion are being approached. Like you can't duplicate a rock with the same texture around in real life. So that's kind of a similar thing there. So they paint the entire set at once, obviously, as well. And you're only working on what's seen by the camera, which saves a lot of work on texturing things that aren't in shot or are occluded or are so low res that you only need like 4 pixels to describe them. So that's really, really useful, and it saved us a ton of time. And yeah, and gives us this like nice hand-painted feel. So here you can see some befores and afters of that.
So that brings us to our conclusion. The topic of how to make a short film is an incredibly broad one, and we're absolutely not experts by any means, but we hope this gives a few of you some kind of jumping off point if you're lucky or unlucky enough to be producing a short film right now. Of course, we're free to answer any questions in the Q&A session, no matter how general or how specific. This overview was just that, an overview, so we haven't really dived too deeply into all the details and experiences that come from making short films, so please just ask any question you like. You can reach us all on LinkedIn if you want to ask something about a particular part of the pipeline, or if we've run out of time in this session or whatever. Anyway, I guess let's hand it back over to Foundry and Framestore for the Q&A. Thank you very, very much for listening in.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a great final film. It was so impressive to see what you guys put together after all of that hard work and trials and tribulations you went through producing the film. So now it's time for a short kind of question session from me to find out how you guys found it, and also to try and get some questions that the others may have answered after this by Joyce from the Foundry. But congratulations again. How do you guys feel?
Pretty good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Can't believe I'm here.
Great stuff, great stuff. All around Europe at the moment. Daniel, you've probably got the best looking place at the moment compared to me, who, I apologise for the background noise, it's screaming children at bath time. But yeah, look at where you are, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, you can't see much now because it's dark now, but there's some mountains and an island in the background, I promise.
Oh my goodness me. All right. So what I've got here, guys, is just 4 questions for you that I've put together. And it would be great to get your insight into it, if that's all right. So my first question to you guys is, why did you decide to apply for our virtual internship, Launchpad?
We had just made a film for university, so we were kind of coming sort of fresh off of that, really, and it was like we have a summer where we're not really doing too much. Let's just do it, really. And it's like we already had the group, so it's like we didn't really need to search for
we dived
people.
from one project into the others like straight away.
Yeah.
Which was cool though, because like there wasn't many opportunities out there at that time, especially due to Corona, obviously. So yeah.
Great. Okay. And then so what did you, well, obviously you were saying that you took part in one project, which I guess was pretty much working together, even probably being together during that project. What was the positives and negatives and now switching it up and changing it to kind of a virtual project, virtual internship then?
For me, like I would say the biggest like positive of like virtual internship is actually like, you know, you can potentially get any talent from all over the world. I mean, during the internship, we have mentors coming from Montreal, coming from India. You know, it's not location based. That's like, for me, like that's like the biggest. Other thing, you know, you can just work in your PJs or boxes. You save a lot of money in terms of traveling as well. You don't have to go to your office. You have flexible schedule as well. I mean, if you decide to work on late night, you can just do it. So that's for me.
Any negatives? Anyone?
Please. I mean, there's definitely a few ones. There's always negatives, are there? I mean, I think the biggest negative was like missing the social interaction, really, like going into a studio, working with the artist there, popping into another office, or like walking over to your friends and just being like, oh yeah, what are you up to? Can you teach me that? Or I'm really stuck with that now. Can you like give me a hand or something like that? Which is really useful if you're like in the studio, which obviously with calls and stuff, you can kind of get to the people, but it kind of takes some time to get what you want or get what you need. And it feels more awkward to call someone if you just have a little problem, definitely as well. So that's one of the biggest disadvantages of like working from home, definitely.
Yeah, that's true. But you guys all dealt with that. And I don't just mean you as a team, but seeing all of you guys and how you dealt with working on your Discord channels and how you communicated with each other. It was very, very similar to seeing what it's like on the floor at the moment for a lot of different artists and productions that we've got going on at Framestore. So you dealt with it very well in a very mature way. It was really, really well done. Okay, so the big question I've got is, what do you feel you've walked away with, if anything? Hopefully something.
Oh, loads, obviously. Yeah, I think we walked away with a complete understanding of like the Framestore pipeline and like the various in-house tools and softwares and stuff. And you guys gave us a lot of in-depth information and webinars and general training videos and stuff like every week. And yeah, so as a result, it definitely feels like we've worked at Framestore, that's for sure. But then also like we have our own tiny community now, which is really cool, and all the interns are still in touch, and we are planning to go out for drinks, but without a disease would be great.
we do all need to meet up.
Yeah,
there were talks about meeting up at Framestore, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it's when we can all get back to London.
That'll happen when when it happens, for sure. You guys will come back. So, okay, so probably I'm looking at the chat and looking at people who are joining. There's obviously a lot of students on the chat at the moment, and I think my last question, and I will almost add to this as well, but what advice would you give your fellow graduates at this really uncertain time and everything like that? What would you say to them, or what can you say to them, should we say?
That's a good question. I think it's like it's very difficult because we're also just graduates. We also have no clue what we're doing, by the way. We're just pretending. So there's like, obviously, you wanna like work on your portfolio. I think if you have the free time now with Corona as well, it's just kind of like get into. I know motivation, especially if you're at home all the time, can be really tough. I've experienced that as well. There's lots of distractions at home, and you could also just watch TV all day, right? And I get that as well. And it's nice to have, like, if you can, obviously it's difficult with student rooms and student accommodation, but it's really nice to have a different space to work. If uni opens up again, hopefully at some point, it's definitely recommendable to work in their spaces. To have the kind of like separation of work and home, it helps so much for motivation. And, you know, just kind of like
in this kind of hybrid void between, oh, this is my room where I sleep, where I spend my free time, and I also work here now. That's definitely a good tip. Yeah, network. I mean, what you can do, what I've done, and that's like completely online as well. You can like go on LinkedIn, for example, and stuff like that, and get some feedback, talk to people. That's definitely a good idea. If you're making short films, there's a few pointers I can give from my experience of like, no, it's the 4th short film I've made now. Or like we've made now, to be fair. Don't want to steal all the fame. I've only done my small part there. I just make it look pretty at the end, right? Yeah, like get a team together that covers the pipeline, obviously. Either have your team fitted towards the project or fit the project towards the team. Like with student work, I often find that you have to fit the project towards the team because you don't have that much capability of like just getting all the people you need and all the talent you need. So it's definitely a good idea to like, if you don't have a guy for FX, just don't have FX, or do the FX and comp, or kind of cheat your way around, or adapt the story in a way where you like kind of avoid it in a smart way. Definitely always try to do it as short as possible. Like, I know every time we go into stories, like we've done this so many times. You come up with a story, it's a fantastic idea. You start writing down the script, it's a 5-minute film. You can't do that. Like, you can try, but obviously the longer, like keep it short and simple is the best idea, and it's the best concept you can ever do. Cut it down to one thing. The Framestore as well, we had an entire series of jokes that we wanted to pack into this, and we have 30 seconds. And we realized it's not possible. We can try and talk faster, but it's not going to happen then. So we cut it down to like one joke in the end, and I think that's a good thing to do. Like, have one main idea, one main concept, and cut everything else as much as you can, and focus on your VFX artist at the end. So focus on getting the VFX to the level you want. Even if your story is bad, not the greatest. Don't worry about it like too much. Of course, you want to have a great story, and everyone wants that. But at the same time, it's going to be chopped up into your show reels, and it's going to be shown out of context in reels if you apply to companies and stuff. So keep that in mind, I guess. But a good story definitely helps motivation. If you're just working on random pieces, it's also like really hard because you don't have this bigger thing in front of you, the bigger thing you want to do. So find the balance between that. But that's all I can say, really.
Okay. No, that's exactly it. And I think you've kind of covered the reason why we felt it was important at Framestore to continue on with this internship, really. It gave you those opportunities that even maybe we weren't able to offer the entry-level opportunities at this point. We still wanted you guys to have that Launchpad to be able to show work and create a wider portfolio, as well as the other 7 teams who all created amazing projects. So and hopefully this is all giving you that opportunity to at least bolster your show reel. And exactly what you're saying is that this is a really uncomfortable time, and obviously you guys have spent so much time trying and working so hard on your university degrees, finding portfolios, etc. That hopefully this is giving you that chance to come together and produce a great final film. So yeah, well done, and you were very deserving winners. So yeah, congratulations. So all right, that wraps up my questions. I think I'm going to hand back to Joyce now, who's going to take some questions from the crowd that's watching. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Henry.
Thank you.
All right, shall we dive into some of the audience questions? Perfect. Okay. Any tips for animating quickly under pressure?
Yeah. Yeah, so I did touch upon this, and so because 4 weeks in, we basically rewrote our entire script, and then we had 4 weeks remaining for the internship, and then you have to give time for CFX after anim. You have to give time for shot sculpt. You have to give time for rendering and comp. So I basically had 2 weeks to animate this whole thing. And yeah, I I wouldn't care about poses. I really wouldn't care about poses because it can take like half an hour to get a good pose. If you're really trying, if you're really wanting to polish it, it can take a really long time. Just whack something out that looks really bad, honestly, and just get the idea out there and put that forward to your team and see if that works. And if it's not working, it's fine. You've not wasted much time. And if it is working, then you can go on to actually doing posing and timing and all of this stuff. So yeah, I guess Animbot, if you use Animbot, can be pretty good. I actually didn't use it for this. I used more like Tween Machine. I don't normally use Tween Machine because it can give you like very mechanical. It could give you a very mechanical kind of look. So it's like I don't really use it. But for this, it was pretty good to just get something out there very, very quickly. So if you're comfortable using tools, it's really, really good. But yeah, I guess that's what I would say. Just get something out really quickly.
Yeah.
Don't even bother polishing.
Yeah, I think that's like something you can like generalize onto all departments. What I really learned in, I think it was first and second year of university, was work towards the finish line. Do not do one task perfectly and then do the next task perfectly. It's not gonna, you're gonna end up with a half-finished project. Instead, do one task shittily, do the next task shittily, and so on. Do the entire thing, and then with the time at the back, polish it again. Because then, at any time you stop, you kind of have already an entire thing. Like if you and also like cut corners where you can. If it's out of shot, don't do it. If it's hidden or not seen, don't do it. If it's like, I had to model a car, anything that wasn't there, like wasn't seen in the shot, I didn't do, because it just needs to be like as efficient as it can get and as pretty as it can get, but only from what you want to show. Same with films as well. Like if you have a character that's like half in the background or a cast that's half in the background, I see that a lot of student work. People spend a lot of time perfecting that one thing, and in the great scheme, it doesn't matter. And that one stone in that one corner is really good, but the film isn't rendered, so you can't really show it off either. So I think that's what I learned on the hard way as well, obviously, and I think you guys will learn it the hard way as well, because it always happens. But yeah, just like kind of doing the next step really quickly before finishing the first step is sometimes something that really helps to kind of get you to the finish line and then have an entire thing that you then can chisel away on. And always prioritize, like if you have the entire thing, you've done everything, the basics of everything, so you kind of have something. It doesn't look great yet, but then chisel away at the things that are most apparent. Usually it's the lighting, and then it's like the most apparent things you can see. And everything else, if it's not super apparent, you can kind of like wing it. And that's how you save like a chunk, like 80% of the time. If you did everything perfect, and you did this technique, it saves you probably 80% of the time. And that's, I think, very important to do.
Perfect. Thank you for answering that. Let's have another look at another question. How long did the film take to render?
Ah, yes. That's a good question. It kind of depends on your render farm, doesn't it? You can render things on singular machines and so on, and it's a pain. And I've done it before, but you need a render farm for anything that's more than like, let's say 5 to 10 seconds, you kind of need a render farm. We had one provided by Framestore, and we kind of calculate, okay, like I think we had some really long shots and we kind of cut it up in between. Everywhere we had a cut, kind of like, okay, we can kind of like divide it up into parts. And I think the longest part took about a night to render, so like a few hours. To make it a little bit more generalized, so you guys can actually do something with that information, I usually aim to have my frames rendered between 30 minutes and an hour. Depends on the scene, depends on what you do. You can get frames that are 10 minutes or 5 minutes even, but sometimes you get frames that are like 3 hours. You can't do that. So aim at around an hour-ish max. If something's just grainy and you can't get it, you can try denoises. And if you really want to push it, you can go to 1 hour and a half, and that's still okay. But everything above that, I would say definitely a no-go. Aim for half an hour, 40 minutes. That's like the sweet spot you want to be. Optimize the scenes and so on. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Great, thank you for that. Next question is, it just disappeared from the screen. Let me see. It's moving so quickly, so I have to keep track. Right, so this one I really liked from Sebastian. Any advice for first-time planning and being on set for a student film?
Don't do it in winter.
Don't do it in winter. You will. I mean, most of you watching a Herts students, you're going to film in winter. You've got to deal with it.
Yeah, you can't get around that. It's just how the curriculum is set up, isn't it? Yeah, in winter you have the problem with sun, because the sun sets at like starts setting at 3. You start losing sunlight at 3, at 4-ish, and you can't film the rest of the day. You gotta get up early, and it's gonna be cold. You're gonna have to remember that. Planning and setting up
5 a.m., right?
5,
yeah, depends
6 a.m.
on things. Yeah, some of them we went up really early. I think the most important thing is read up a lot on VFX supervisors, because they are the people who are on set and are responsible for the VFX. So they need to do, HDRIs and crumbles and Macbeth charts and all of that stuff, keeping track of everything. So that's one big job. The other big job is like keeping track of what you're doing, slates, what take is it, what shot is it, what time of day is it, what is the weather like. Bring a lot of time, because the weather is unpredictable. We filmed outside, so I guess I would recommend filming inside, because it's very consistent and you can like film at any time of the day because it's not dependent on weather and daylight and so on. But if you're filming outside, keep track of the weather. Keep in mind that sometimes it's gonna rain and you can't cover it up and you can't fake it, so you're gonna have to wait for another day before you can shoot again and stuff like that. And get comfortable with the equipment you're using. You should hopefully be using fairly high quality and fairly expensive equipment. So, be cautious, check that you're doing everything to the guidelines and so on to not break anything. And yeah, just get comfortable with using it, so you're not on set and having to like get up the manual and be like, how do we do this? Yeah.
Also, plan for absolutely everything. Like, we were lucky that Amy kind of acted as production manager on set, and we had a plan for the budget. We had the plan for what day we were getting equipment, what day we were filming what scene and stuff. So everything, it still didn't run like clockwork, but it ran a lot more smoothly because we planned everything down to like at 6:05 p.m. we will be doing this scene. And yeah, it worked a lot better that way than the alternative.
By the way, you're never gonna stick to the time. You're gonna try, but you're never gonna stick to the time. But having the plan is important.
Try.
Yeah, having that plan is so important.
We have comments saying, "Tell them where you filmed." So I guess, we filmed in this tiny house for like, how long was it? About a week.
Yeah, we nearly got shot because it was game season, and we were out in the forest. This is another thing, it's planned to make sure it's not gaming season. Because this guy came up to us with his rifle and he was like, are you aware that I could have shot you? So we learned that the easy way, I guess. Not the hard way.
We also happened to have a prop gun with us as well, so that was not that was not fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, we filmed in this tiny house and we did some really cool stuff. What did we do? We built a fence. Why did we build a fence? I don't actually know why we built the fence. It was quite fun. But
we needed it for the film. Yeah. But that's technically a different project. I don't want to stray too much from the Framestore project now.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm glad you guys are all safe during the filming.
It was really fun. I do recommend it. Like, yeah, I would recommend only doing it for a couple of days. I think because we had like a 4-minute long film. Yeah, it took us a week to film.
Yeah, I'm for like a 2-minute film max, I'd say, depending if you have live action or not. If you have full CG, even less. Yeah. It's just nice for you. Like, you're really shooting yourself in the knee if you like make a longer film, because you just work yourself up. You just burn out if you do a too long film, because you really want to have that vision going, and then you have to cut quality to get it done, and that's kind of like not that fun. So definitely do shorter projects.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely do not burn out. Thank you for answering that. Next question, I've picked up this one. How do you light an exterior animation scene?
Well, with lights. I mean, currently depends on like what you're aiming for, I guess. I usually work. My workflow for lighting is look at reference and look at the concept art, or whatever goal you have. Get the goal set straight, because if you don't have a goal set in your mind, you're just fumbling around and wasting time. If you have a rough goal in your head, then I usually start with finding an HDRI as a base. And then, lighting theory, key light, rim light, and fill light, all of those, kind of light your character. Good feedback we got also from Framestore. Light your character, do not light your scene, because the character is what's important and not the background environment. And then I usually, do start with that, and then for example, for our shot, the HDI in the end was completely dialed back, and I only worked with area lights. I think I only used area lights from Arnold to light that. Now your area lights know all the settings they have, and just have fun. That's how I do it. It's pretty straightforward.
Definitely the light the hero, not the environment, was really important, because we really got pulled up on that, because you couldn't see his face that much. You couldn't connect with the character because we got caught up on like lighting the environment around him. So it's super important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, have reference, always have reference. That's very important. I think that's it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for answering that. And another one. Noel asks, how did you decide on the style of the character model?
Shall I answer this, or?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So we kind of worked together a lot as a team. We gathered a lot of reference and kind of inspiration, and just trying to kind of work out what we kind of wanted to produce at the time. We knew that we wanted to do something stylized because of the time constraint. And we got a lot of inspiration from stop motion films, so like Kubo and the Two Strings, Missing Link, and so we did a lot of exploration, and a lot of the team as well did a lot of like concept art we were based off, and in the presentation as well, we kind of just did a few experiments in ZBrush to kind of get some character feeling, some sort of flows, and then after speaking to one of the guys at Framestore, a guy called Dan, who was really useful. He recommended to kind of approach things from an anatomical standpoint and go from there, which personally I found to be a huge benefit. Stylizing the character around muscle groups and face around the muscle groups of the face to allow for kind of the correct expressions and everything to kind of feel cohesive and really portray a character, I guess. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Elliot. This question I really liked as well from Roja. Were there any problems that you came across when working in a team? And if so, how did you come about solving them?
Sleep schedules in lockdown. Everyone was out of sync.
I think there was a point where I was going to bed when you were waking up, Emily. I probably shouldn't be announcing that, but yeah, that'll happen, especially while everyone's at home and time. Because it was fairly soon after the lockdown started we were doing this, so time still didn't really exist, and everyone's sleep schedules were absolutely all over the place. But yeah, you need to communicate. So ideally you want to get that down.
I think a big one for us was getting the rig down the pipeline. So for modeling, rigging, and animation, we had to be in like almost like the infinity loop symbol of just constant communication all the time and stuff. So working out how to, when you can't like go over to someone's desk and have a chat with them like that, it was working out how to convey the problems everyone was having and how to convey how to solve things, I guess, was really hard to work out. But I think setting up a Discord channel helped us out a lot, because we could just all jump in a call for like 5-10 minutes. But yeah, constant communication was really hard, but really necessary to work out how to get going.
Yeah, you have to talk to your teammates all the time. If someone is like non-responsive for like multiple days during a project, that's like not really a good sign. So keep everyone in the loop. Be nice. That's very important. Like, if someone's not carrying their weight or someone's slacking, that's gonna happen. It's a student project. Be nice to them. Don't be a dick about it. And kind of like figure out why it's happening and then make your decisions from there. Like if someone's consistently not going to be able to pull that work, you're gonna have to like figure out how to deal with that. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I mean, like, for example, cutting his work and giving some of his work to someone else. You don't have to like kick him from the team or something like that if it's not like, if he's not like fucking you up at all, if he's just not being able to like deal with everything at once, because that happens at uni and that's okay. And we all went through that. Like uni is a rough time. Not always. You have a lot of fun as well, obviously. But it can, like, especially with group projects and like VFX workloads and stuff like that, it can get rough. So just like be understanding of each other and kind of like keep everyone in the loop all the time. If you have any problems with your teammates, talk about it. If there's like problems within the team, get a team meeting together. Everyone needs to talk. And I think, yeah, like constantly, I think we had like, at the beginning we didn't as much because we were idiots as well, but we kind of ramped up at the end to having like a talk almost every day, like dailies basically in industry, where you just talk every day. Everyone's like talking about what they're doing. Hey, I'm doing this and this, and that's what I'm gonna do next. Or I'm having this and this problem, and I think it's your fault. And the other one is like, no, I think it's your fault. And then you figure it out together, and you're like, okay, that's cool now. And everything like that. And obviously, social things are gonna arise as well. That's just how it goes. But yeah, just be understanding and keep talking. That's the most important thing.
So for a more technical issue, we had keeping the design language consistent from the model to the environment and through the animation and stuff as well. And the solution to that, I think a lot of was just reference and just make sure everyone was working from the same reference and everyone was on the same page about what everything had to look like, just so we had a cohesive, clear design throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. I would also like to add, probably get a consistent and structured pipeline, let's say from modeling and then moving on to rigging and texturing. During the internship, that's where we got a lot of like issues because it's just the model is just like all over the place, and getting your pipeline to flow smoothly will just reduce bottlenecks along the way, and it will just like yeah, again, as they all said, constant communication with your teammate, figuring out the problems with this and how you're going to figure that.
I think a lot of people don't realize how much work management is.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to accept that at least a quarter, if not half of your time goes down for management. And it's like the bigger your team is, it increases exponentially. So the smaller the team is, the better. But obviously you need this minimum size to get all the things covered. But the bigger your team is, the exponentially the management just rises. And a lot of people underestimate that. So like setting up, it's management, like setting up your pipeline and naming conventions and telling everyone what to do and when and what the timeline is and so on is a lot of work, and definitely don't underestimate that, because a lot of students obviously kind of, you go in there and you're like, I'm an artist, I'm gonna make art, and they only do that and they forgot, oh yes, damn it, I'm in a big student project, and everyone kind of like goes their own ways, and then at the end they realize, oh no, something hasn't worked out or something like that. So that's why management and keeping everyone in the loop is very important.
I'd just like to add one very, very small thing that we ran into. What with everyone working from home right now, I would lock down your version of Maya that you're using. It needs to be the same version, because you'll run into problems where things aren't compatible with other versions of Maya. And Emily and I had this problem where the rig that she had made wouldn't open on my version of Maya and so on, and we had to change versions of Maya mid-project, which caused other problems in the pipeline. So actually, with you all working from home, make sure you're all using the same version of Maya, or I guess all software. If any of you are using the same softwares, make sure it's all the same version.
I think
if you share work,
when that happened.
yeah, if you work with any software and like have to share work, have to like share scripts or anything, it's usually a good idea to have the same software version.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And we're very close this time, so I'm going to just throw in 2 more last questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
So one question from Hemachandran, he asked, did you use mockup or performance capture?
We actually did not. I considered showing my reference in that video that we made, but I didn't realize that I would potentially be showing it when I made it. So I was in my pajamas and I was using a crutch as an axe. So I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't show that. But yeah, we did not use mocap. I guess if you know how to use it, I would recommend it, but I just stuck with what I knew and went just full speed ahead.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And then lastly, one final question is, what did you guys enjoy the most in texturing in Mari?
As for Patrick.
Ooh, what was the question again?
What did you enjoy most by using Mari, and what did you enjoy the most out of it? Yeah.
For me, I would say like hybrid. I can do everything like procedurally, and then I can just do any artistic or creative freedom that I can do. So for me, like Mari is like there's a lot of control, and as well as like the non-destructive workflow. It's just super easy to do anything. As well as like again, like I can just like put my creative freedom in there.
Everything's node-based, so it's super like easy to stack things together, which is really useful.
Yeah, the non-destructive workflow, just like we can do a lot of iterations, and that's like the most like fun bit for me. I can just like do any iterations. I can like do some concepts. If the team really likes the design, the creative choices I did, then I can just like bash it out super quickly. And so yeah, that's for me, like that's like it's a bit subjective, but for me that's like what I enjoyed the most. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for joining this webinar and sharing your experience and your work and the entire project. Thank you so much for enlightening us and students and anyone who wants to join this internship as well next year. I mean, you guys have done a fantastic job. I love it so much, and all I can say is wow. So thank you so much again for sharing your experience, and I hope you guys have inspired other people as well.
I want to say something.
Go for it.
There were 7 groups for the Framestore Launchpad. We are just one group, and all the other films that were made were so unbelievably incredible. Go and watch them. Like we are just one team. Like there were some seriously good films. Go and watch them.
I must say, I looked at some of the other videos as well, and I mean they were all so brilliant, and I can imagine the decision being very difficult as well to choose a winner. But I mean, great work, guys. Keep up the great work. And all of you guys listening in, stay safe wherever you are in the world. Join us again for another virtual event next week. And if you guys have any questions, just ping us an email. If you guys want to connect with the speakers as well, we'd be happy to put you in touch. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening. Have a good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.